Hello and welcome to episode 172 of the Arena Regulars podcast. I'm Zach,
And I'm Jeff.
and we're your source for drunken Magic the Gathering arena content.
That's right. A couple of regular dudes drinking some irregular beers and talking about Magic the Gathering, in particular, the online client MTG Arena.
Oh, buddy, we got new set. I got the new set smell, you know?
Love it.
Smells good. We are going to get into all the new things that Magic has to offer with the Foundation set that just came out onto Arena. But first, each episode we drink a beer. We rate it on a scale from bronze to mythic, just like the tiers in Arena. So, with that, Jeff, what's on tap?
Hey, we're continuing with Cartwright Springs. This is the brewery campground kind of place I went to when I went back home for a little while. That
Hmm.
brewery is actually I think I've been saying it's just outside of Ottawa. It's in a place called Pakenham, and this is called the Pakenham Bitter. It's a bitter. It's 5.2%,
Mm.
and the can looks like all of their cans.
Yes. Jeff, when I was talking about this beer earlier and I said it's pack and ham, like a meat packing industry,
Packing ham.
you could have corrected me.
Oh, I thought you were talking about packing ham.
Oh, huh. Okay,
Yeah.
sure. Anyway, it looks like it says pack and ham, like an apostrophe. Anyway, um,
I don't know this location that well that
okay.
I'm like confident enough to correct somebody on his
But
pronunciation.
also Pakenham sounds more like a place than pack and ham.
Yeah.
So,
That's
but
that's what I was going with. Yeah.
yeah, okay. Well, you can tell me when I'm wrong. You do often enough anyway. All right. Let's crack this open.
Let's dive in.
All right, we have some magic news. Like I said, new set is out. Foundations is on Arena. Pre-release was that last weekend, and I guess technically we're recording this on a Thursday, so technically tomorrow is the official release date. Though,
Hmm.
does that really matter for anything? Like all the cards are legal. You can still buy cards. Like the release dates don't matter anymore. Um, if you see a
If you
release
went to
date,
like a paper tournament yesterday, like paper standard, would you be allowed to play these cards?
yeah, they changed the rules.
Okay, so it just doesn't matter at
It
all.
just doesn't matter at all. Pre-release is the real release. It's really weird. But anyway, um, it is out. Also, we have some other news. With the announcement on Monday, just with like things that were going to happen with Foundations, we got some banned and restricted announcements for Alchemy and historic formats, um, which I think is just good to say, just so everyone knows and doesn't get confused. Because actually, this is funny enough. I was at a standard paper event on Tuesday, the day Foundations came out on Arena, and people were asking me about some of these, being confused about like, wait, what happened? What is this?
Hmm.
So what it is that Monstrous Rage is banned in Alchemy, which is kind of weird because Alchemy is the format where you're supposed to rebalance cards and not just ban them. That was like kind of the point of the thing. But basically, the reasoning behind that was, hey, this card is very clean. There's a lot of cards that do very similar things. There's no point in changing it, really. So you could just use a different version of this card if you want to. Let's just ban
Yeah,
it.
interesting.
Hmm.
I feel like I would have just nerfed it
Yeah, like,
just to be like the we don't ban stuff, you
and
know?
like just,
Like,
yeah, basically the nerf would be like, don't give it as much power. Give it +1/+0 and a monster roll, or like nothing, just instant
yeah,
speed monster roll token.
yeah, like just the monster.
Hmm.
Or like change monster to one of the crappier aura
Yeah.
tokens, and
Or
then
like make it 2 mana, or like make it sorcery speed, something like that.
yeah,
Um, anyway, it
sorcery would be a a real kick in the teeth.
yeah, that's so that's basically like what they were kind of talking about was like either we completely ruin the card and it doesn't do what it's supposed to, which is but like that's what nerfing is, right? Anyway,
I
um,
just like for me, it's the precedent. It's like,
mhm.
sure, I agree with them in this case. There's a lot of cards that essentially do this. There's no way to make this card still interesting.
Hmm.
B- And like interesting enough to be playable but not dominant because cards like this are literally only played for the raw rate. How
Hmm.
much damage with trample can I get through at instant speed extra? And so you're not going to really you're either going to essentially like shadow ban the card by
Hmm.
making it too crappy, or you know, I get that, but like at what point does that start morphing into like, oh well, you have, shock, so you know, we might as well just ban this other burn spell. And it's like, okay, well, you have, a creature that does kind of a similar thing. We might as well just ban this one because you have other options, right? Like it could get looser and looser
You're
in
saying
the
it's a slippery
hard
slope.
cards like
Um,
this exist argument. And so like
yeah, I can kind of see it. I just don't know. Like
mostly
ultimately,
just coming from having not a lot of faith in the in the
rebalancing
arena
team.
rebalancing team, I guess.
Well, while we're kind of on that topic, there's another card that was banned. Temporal Manipulation was banned in Historic. That is one of the special guest cards from Foundations. If you're looking through
Yeah.
stuff, can't find it. This
Any
is
extra turn card, they want to ban it. I'm always for it.
yeah, yeah. This
Don't
is
even care the context.
yeah.
You want to ban something that gives people extra turns? Do
Mhm.
it.
Yeah. So that's just a no-brainer. That's just like a they banned it before it went into the format because obviously.
Does
Uh,
anyone like these cards? Like they keep printing them, so some people must like them. I think maybe new players are very attracted to the idea, but like most people, even when they win with it, are like just acknowledging that it's a
Kind of shitty
brutal play
mechanic.
pattern.
I mean, it is. I lost to one in draft where they played temporal manipulation, and then there's a Sphinx that has flash, and then you when it attacks, you can give a instant and sorcery in your graveyard
Ugh.
flashback. So yeah, that was pretty brutal.
In limited?
Yes, unlimited. Yeah,
I mean, like,
yeah,
ridiculous.
it was ridiculous. But anyway, they ended up winning with one card left in their deck, or they drew their last card and then attacked because they
Oh,
were drawing so many
perfect.
cards and taking turns. So that
So that card contributed to that person's fun.
it did. It was cool to watch for me, but it sucked to lose,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah.
Or I just knew it was going to happen at some point, kind of thing. So yeah, but talking about nerfs specifically, or just rebalances, there are a whole host of new, I don't know, alchemy rebalances, but they're really just a bunch of rebalances of cards. We're not really going to talk about these. You can go check them out if you want, but it's just cards like Leyline Resonance, Heartfire Hero, Nadu, things like that. And then a bunch of like actual alchemy cards that I had never seen before looking at them. Anyway, if you're interested in all that stuff, go check it out on the announcements. But we're not going to get into that because we don't focus on alchemy very much, but we do like talking about standard and draft. So
Yes.
as we get into this, Jeff, Foundations, it's out. It
Yes.
is supposed to be well, what it feels like calling all old Magic players back. Hey, come play Magic the way it was supposed to be played before Universes Beyond kind of does whatever it does next year. Um, and I'm feeling the hype, man. There's a buzz.
Yeah. This, we always start with like, how does the set feel? Like, did it deliver on what it sort of promised in terms of theme? And this one's a little different because it's not a themed set in the tradition that we're used to of,
Hmm.
being on a plane or being, whatever, a murder mystery, whatever they're doing these days.
Yeah.
Um, this is supposed to feel like a core set that brings that nostalgia for the old players. So it's supposed to be an approachable set for new players that brings the nostalgia for the old players.
Hmm.
And I think they nailed that.
Yeah.
That that was all over the pre-release I was at. There were people that were like, I haven't come to play in paper in years, but like, they just have some of my favorite cards in this set, or uh, and like I literally spoke to several different people who were like, yeah, I used to play a long time ago, but when I tried to get back into it, the barrier to re-entry seemed so high like I was looking at Duskmourn and it just looked so complicated.
Hmm.
And so I came to this one instead and like, you know, had a blast. And I was like, that's exactly what this set was designed to do, like
Hmm.
entice you to come back and make it feel like possible. Because
Absolutely.
while I think Duskmourn was an awesome format, definitely, it's definitely a little on the complex side.
It it definitely was, and I think Duskborn was just such a good draft format. It was so much fun.
Yeah, it
Um,
was super fun. But I could imagine reading those cards, not having played in a while, and being like, oof,
oh,
like
these are
this
like
is a lot.
if
Yeah.
you haven't really played with like it might be easier because we played with Delirium before. We know these mechanics, we know this stuff.
Right. Yeah.
But
Imagine
keeping
you haven't
track of
seen any of them.
and even
Yeah.
just keeping track of all the different stuff and being like, oh my gosh, like this is just a lot of things to
And there's
like
rooms and it's
yeah, and
like,
like
yeah.
weird interactions and a bunch of stuff. Yeah, which when you play all the time, you're really used to. Um, I had a similar experience at my pre-release where my first two opponents were fairly either new to Magic or new to paper Magic. So it was nice to just like be able to chat with them and be like, either why you're here or it seemed like Foundations was a thing that they were just excited to come out and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna try my hand at this thing. This it feels like a good starting point, like you were saying. Not even just in complexity side, but even in like it feels like we're starting a new, even as Wizards has said, Foundations era, and people can actually feel it. I think. Um,
Yeah.
even when I was at that standard like thing this last week, nobody was really playing with. It was just like an FNM kind of, but it's on a Tuesday. But all the cards, were from the last few sets. Nobody was really playing Foundation stuff. But one guy just like was at the store talking to people, and he bought one of those like starter boxes that they have, and it
Oh
has like a
yeah.
bunch of cards in it. And then the one of the guys at the shop who was working there helped him build a standard deck, and he just played that. And
Oh,
then
that's awesome.
like he yeah, there's a couple infinite combos in Foundations. He ended up getting like the life gain loss one with like the blood chief. What is it? The that new black card that like whenever you yeah a bloodthirsty conqueror. It's
Hmm.
like the whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life. So
Yeah. Yeah.
he was able to have that in his deck and all that kind of stuff. So it was just cool to see a player like be like, yeah, I could jump into this thing, and then they did. They were able to do that. So
Yeah, those starter kits are awesome. Like people were just whipping them out. I swear like half of our table had one of those. They're like, you got one too? And just like
oh
these
really?
big ass boxes of cards. And I was
Oh
like,
wow.
whoa, that is a little different than the starter kits from back in my day.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and we had the coma table at our pre-release. I think there were four comas or something. Which
What?
at the time I thought it was like ridiculous, but I kind of assumed that Coma was a mythic rare. So that kind of called out to me that Coma is just a rare because I feel
Oh.
like it was not a big pre-release. There were like maybe 10 to 12 people there, and I think there were like four Comas floating around. So
Oh yuck.
um, yeah, but it was really cool because my first round I played against a guy who was um, into modern and legacy. Like this player had
Okay.
multiple modern decks, multiple legacy decks, and was just here for fun. In the second round, I played against someone who this was their first time playing at like an event in paper.
Hmm.
Um, and the third round was this person that I was talking about that is an old school player that like came back to the game because Foundation seemed like an appropriate window to get back in. I was like, that's a real spectrum there. Like
Yeah,
it's about
absolutely.
as broad as you could possibly ask for in 3 rounds.
Hmm.
I went 2-1, and guess which one I lost to?
The second one.
Yeah, the brand new player.
Yeah.
That was my loss. It was kind of funny because there was a moment where, like, I was at 6. He had all 3 power attackers, and he had exactly like one more attacker than me. So I don't remember what it
Hmm.
was. I had like 5 blockers. He had 6 attackers. All of his stuff had 3 power. And I was at 6. And he was like, okay, so I think I have more guys than you. They all have at least three. So one of them's going to get unblocked. And I have this giant growth. But I don't know. I think that means that I should win, but I don't know like how
To do that.
to do that. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll show you. Like, yes, I'm dead.
Yeah.
Here's how it works. So you cast that right away.
Yeah.
Um,
And then I know which one to
and
block.
then I block it and I kill you on the crackback. Oof, tough luck,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. So brutal.
Yeah, well, I should have learned the rules.
Before you come to the
But
pre-release.
yeah, but I miss that about pre-release sometimes where, and he would be like, "Oh, do you mind if I like take this back or work this out? Like I don't really know how this part works." And he just kind of shows me his hand. I'm like, "Yeah, I see what you're trying to do, the way you want to accomplish that, like rules wise or whatever, is you wait for me to declare my blockers and then
Hmm.
you just point this at whatever I don't choose." And that aspect's always fun where you're just like, we're playing for like a pack. Let's
Exactly.
not
Yeah.
let's not get too crazy about enforcing things and
Hmm.
it should just be about learning and having fun and stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's funny.
everyone's given that vibe.
I had a similar thing with my first two. I also went 2-1. My first two opponents were fairly new, and there were a couple like little like weird mistakes where they'd like one of them was one of my opponents had cast like make your move on a creature that didn't have 4 power, so he couldn't kill it. And I was like, oh, just like I think it had 4 toughness. I was like, oh, that's like a different thing. But I basically told him like he's like, oh, well, now you know I have that card. I was like, yes, I do, but we should play this the way that we were going to. And so then I was like, still do what you were going to do, like attack. And it's like, I'm still going to do the trick that I was planning on doing. And you get to get me with it if I didn't know you had it. But like,
Right.
it's not
Yeah.
really fun if I try to play this. It's like, I was
And then
fully
like play around
expecting.
it the rest of the game.
Yeah, it's
Like,
like, no, I was fully prepared to make this play.
yeah.
And you would have been able to get me if you just had read the card fully. And so, um, that
Or
was
like maybe it's a not fully appreciating the difference between power and toughness and all that stuff.
exactly little things like that. So I was like, it's not really a big deal, and I also won anyway. But also like the same thing, we're not really playing for anything.
Yeah, I'm not trying to hustle
So
new players at
yeah,
PAX.
well,
And if you are doing that at pre-releases, like stop it.
yeah, and this is the type of player I'm talking about where like their first game we had, they kept like a one lander, and
Ooh,
then like didn't
yeah.
draw a land after that. I was like, okay, all right. I was like, you should definitely mulligan that hand, like absolutely. Um, so
Yeah. I
that
feel like I
was
might have got hustled because the new player was like, "Oh, I don't know about this hand. I think I keep it." Then he went like 2 drop, it was green white, 2 drop into the unicorn that gives counters into like two more cards. It like 2 elves and one was like Dwynen's Elite or something. I'm
Mhm.
just like, there's just so many fucking creatures on the board. It's like in my head, I was like, I had a real thinker on that hand.
It's like,
Like,
really, really,
I mean, I assume it was like a two-lander and you just got there on the lands or
like,
something,
yeah,
but
and everything came at the exact time you needed it.
just to
Yeah.
like, is this good? It's my first time. Like, do you want to play for money?
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. Um, well, because the rest of my experience was in my pre-release basically a similar kind of thing where like the last round I was playing against my friend and it was like, oh, we're paired up, we're like 2-0, both of us. And I was like, whatever. I am kind of lazy to actually playing through and like not really caring. So I get my first hand. I'm like, it's got a little bit too many lands. It's a bit slow, but that's okay. And then he has like a really aggressive start and just
Of
smokes me.
course, every time.
And so then, and I also drew like 4 or 5 lands in a row. So I was like, that doesn't help.
Yeah.
We go to game two, and I look at my hand. I'm like, there's a lot of lands in this, but it can't happen twice, can
What are
it?
the odds it happens
And then it
twice?
happened again, and I was like,
Yeah.
well, we didn't really play at all. Just kind
I
of
swear
like,
my deck does things.
yeah, I just didn't mulligan. And it was just terrible, but we got to laugh through it and have a good time. So I
I
didn't
hate
really care at
mulliganing
all.
unlimited though. I'm so like such a stingy
Yeah, it's like all my
mulliganer.
colors are here. I just have
Yeah.
5 lands, but it'll be okay.
So if I
Proceed.
draw plains, then island,
Mhm.
then the removal spell. and then another planes. This hand is great.
Yeah,
Keep.
classic. Keep.
Yeah.
Oh God. Anyway, but no, it really has been so much fun. Just like even cards like Preposterous Proportions, like get losing to that card, which is just
Oh
like
yeah.
the 7 mana sorcery that gives all your creatures +10/+10 and vigilance. Like it doesn't even like there's Overrun in this set, and like Overrun is like way better than this card, right?
Yeah.
Um, and this one's still like it's just cool to see. It's just fun. Like, oh, it doesn't give him trample, but you're like, well, I do have to chump block everything, and so I will die the following turn. Um,
Yeah. Like losing to Overrun feels like, all right, yeah, Overrun, whatever.
mhm.
Losing to this card is like, it's great.
Yeah, yeah. It's just like everything just just looks hilarious and huge, and
It's
there's
just it's preposterous. That's
yeah,
what it is.
there's definitely like a Timmy-ness inside of me that's like having a good time here. Um,
Yeah. And
so
I love vigilance
yeah,
because there's like an outcome where you attack with everything and they kill you on the crackback. Like, what is
yeah.
the vigilance for?
I really, I guess like in case you have one attacker, I don't know. You just like 7 mana. My 1/1's now an 11/11 vigilance. You have to
Yeah.
chump. I
Chump
don't
with
know.
one. Like what
I
you
guess
know, like that's my favorite part of the card. +10/+10
and
and
vigilance.
vigilance.
It's just
Because
funny.
they're gonna somehow keep a strong enough board, not die, and keep a strong enough board to kill you on the crackback without that vigilance.
Yeah. Like I guess it's true because what are like Green's other regular like keywords besides trample, vigilance, and reach? And at least it's not reach. Like sorcery speed reach. That's terrible.
Imagine they get
Uh,
+10/+10 and
and
reach.
reach on your turn. But but no, I've just been having a lot of fun. There's like a lot of big dumb creatures. Some of them I like, some of them I don't like, which I will talk about later. Um,
Ooh, intrigue.
but it's it's been a lot of fun, and draft has actually been extremely interesting, and I've been having a blast.
Yeah, I
Like,
have done only two drafts. Both
mhm,
drafts, I feel like maybe went off the rails a little bit, and like I just wasn't in an archetype. I was in two colors, but I wasn't in the archetype that that color pair is supposed to be.
gotcha.
And so I was like, is that a thing that happens, or is this just like a very like is this just variance where this has happened to me twice in a row, or am I drafting wrong? But I
Maybe
ended up in
both.
blue-white control. Um,
Okay.
for my first draft. That went okay. I think I got 4 or 5 wins, so it wasn't amazing, but it wasn't the worst. But the impetus for that was that I opened two Day of Judgment.
That
Or
makes a
I
lot of
opened the
sense.
first one and got past the second one, and then like
Hmm.
blue was wide open. So I was like, I guess I'm like blue-white control, but I didn't want to just take all the flyers because I'm like, my game plan is kind of Day of Judgment here, so I don't want to like
Hmm.
flood the board and
And
then have a
then,
couple of Day of Judgments rotting in my hand and lose the creature battle. And then, like, you never, I hate when that happens. Like, sometimes you have in limited, this can happen, right? Where you have a sweeper, but your deck also plays creatures, and maybe you didn't
mhm.
have the sweeper in your opener, so you kind of curved out. And then you draw your sweeper, and you're like, what do I do now? Do I just keep this as like a just in case things get out of hand, I can reset. It's usually
Yeah.
what I end up doing. Or do I try to like entice them to play and I just play nothing every turn until I
Hmm.
really get them? Or, that feels bad. So it's always that really awkward feeling. When you have two of them, that happens a lot. So
Yeah.
it's just like, I was just like trying to play like think twices and stuff. And okay, I probably should have just taken all the flyers and just beat people down with blue-white flyers
Yeah,
and
and
just like forget the Day of Judgments. But the fact that I got two of Day of Judgments so early set me on this like weird
on this
track
path that you're like,
of
I think I should do this.
and I was like, when am I gonna do blue-white control with two Day of Judgments ever again? Like in this format.
That's
So
true. That's
let's
true.
do it now. Uh,
Yeah.
and I was just like, come on, let's open like a Kaito or something, or a Johnny or something.
Yeah, some planeswalker that could help you out. Um, I feel like Kaito would probably be better, unless
Oh
Johnny
yeah,
literally just like pluses and you ultimate and win the game. But
yeah.
um, yeah, there is some like cool wacky stuff like I was talking about before with like taking extra turns and things. But I have found today I had a draft. where I had pack one, pick one, Rise of the Dark Realms, and
Nice.
so then I just drafted like a Soul Tide deck around it, and I literally had to stop and go through all the cards to be like, is there anything that lets me shuffle my graveyard back in my library? Like even one card at a time,
Does that
because
exist?
it continuously happened where I would like surveil a bunch of stuff into the graveyard. I had there's an this blue uncommon that lets you let's see, inspiration from beyond. It's like two and a blue, and you could mill three cards and return an instant or sorcery from a graveyard to your hand. It also has flashback. So that was a good way to like get my Rise of the Dark Realms back. So I got to play Rise of the Dark Realms multiple times. Like
That's
it was
awesome.
a ridiculous game, but I ended up like randomly losing to like milling out because I would have seven cards in my deck, but I play Rise of the Dark Realms. It returns all the creatures back, but a bunch of my creatures would either mill or like their creatures would draw cards. So I would end up drawing my whole deck on accident because I like all
That's
my creatures
hilarious.
have like ETBs that let you draw cards.
Right. Yeah.
It was like, oh crap, this is I
Didn't
didn't
think that through.
think that through at all.
You
Um
needed just a bunch of big, beefy, like
stuff.
creatures that don't do anything.
Well, it's also funny because you get all the cards in all the graveyards. So like
Right, it's your opponent's
my
cards. Yeah.
opponent has them too, and a lot of the cards don't say May on them because they just want to be simple. So they're
Right.
just like, okay, I guess I just die now. I play Rise of the Dark Realms and die. I mean, obviously, I did pretty well with that deck, but I had just today I played a lot and I punted so many games, like so many games.
That's that new format vibe, man.
Hmm. And
And I
it's
think core set's in that unique place where it's still a new format, so there's still growing pains. But the format is also simple enough that you realize those mistakes probably. Like, you're like, ah, crap, I could have won if I did this other thing.
mhm.
Whereas really complicated formats, you're probably making a bunch of these mistakes. You just have no idea in the first
I
week.
think that's exactly what it is. Is that like I can identify every single mistake that I make, and it really drives me crazy. But I think if it's in a complicated format, I don't even know I made a mistake.
Yes.
It was like I lost somehow. I don't really know why,
I
but
probably made a
I
mistake
probably did
somewhere.
something wrong.
Yeah.
Um, no, I had an opponent today. Also, it was during that Rise of the Dark Realms game. Um, I had like gone to a really low life total, and they were playing like a spells deck. So they had the archer that like every time you play an instant or sorcery, it deals one damage to your opponent. And so I was
Yeah.
trying to maneuver a way where I didn't just like die. I think I eventually went down to like two life, and luckily I had a couple things that would give me life or do different things. I ended up going back, and I had some food from baking things into pies. I went back up
Of
to eight
course.
life, and I had a Tatiova out. So I have Tatiova. I play a life land. I gain a life, and Tatiova gains me a life. So I'm up to 10. And my opponent's like sick. So then they cast Hidetsugu's Second Right, which is if target player has 10 life, deal 10 damage to them. While
Mhm.
that's on the stack, their archer goes off and pings me for
Ah,
one. I go to 9. They can't kill me.
yeah, yeah. That's something that I feel like would happen to me where I just get too excited and chuck the card out, and as soon as I do realize, like, no.
Yeah, which I did actually exactly the opposite thing in a later game where I was at 7 life against like a red player. They were
Yeah.
attacking me. I had done a bunch of blocks and I just calculated blocks wrong. I just like thought they were attack I was going to take 5, not 7. And I was at 7 life. And so I was like, if I crack this food, I'll be at 10. I don't want to be at 10 because they could just hit me with the Hitotsukus. So I was like, I'll take the damage and then I'll
Playing
gain.
around Hitotsuku's second
And I
right.
literally just let them kill me. And I was like, what the hell was that?
That
I
that was probably
literally
wrong.
I counted multiple times and I was like, yeah, they're hitting me for 5. And those two
So
twos were definitely 3 power. And I was like, fuck.
definitely qualifies as a punt.
That was a
Not
huge
going to
punt.
10 to play around Hitotsuku's second right,
And just
and
losing the game on the
just
spot.
leaving 7 on.
It was horrible. It was so bad. And that was the beginning of the like I because it was literally right after the game where I almost died to Hitotsuku's Second Right.
Of course, yeah, it has to be on your mind for
Yeah,
you to be
yeah. So it
making
was
that play.
literally right there, like, oh wait, I don't want to go to 10. Um, But it
You're
was
like,
the
see, I'm so smart.
yeah,
I'm gonna not go to
it was the
10.
dumbest shit. I was so frustrated. If you want to see that, go to my Twitch channel. It's all recorded, and
Oh, it
I
was on stream. I love that.
flipped out. um, it was brutal, and it started me on a losing streak. I like went 6 and
Oh,
0.
tilt.
I went 6 and 0, and then tilted straight to six and
Full
three.
tilt. Yeah,
It was
nice.
pretty bad. But yeah, like, oh my God.
I love
Anyway,
that. I love those that when that happens where you just get too clever. You're like, no, I'm gonna play around this card, and they're just like, oh yeah,
I
I
just,
did play around that
I,
exotic, obscure card, but I did not play around
but
Shock.
I did not play
Uh,
around. Yeah, the creatures attacking
I did
me,
not play around what was on the board.
literally happening right now. God, it just makes you feel really stupid. So I wanted to share it with you so you could understand.
I appreciate that. But you know what? Like one of the things people love about Magic is that it can make you feel really smart for like
Mhm.
solving some of these weird situations and getting
Yeah.
clever. But that, it's the classic, there is no good without the bad. Like
Hmm.
there is no feeling smart without sometimes feeling stupid.
Yeah.
Like
It
that's
was.
that's what the game offers you.
Hmm.
Sometimes you're gonna feel like a genius, sometimes you're gonna feel like a dumbass. The rest of the time, you're gonna feel like you didn't really have control over what happened and
Yeah.
things just kind of played out.
Things just kind of happened.
Yeah.
Oh God. So,
I do have one additional pre-release story that I forgot, which was
ooh.
that you noticed because you're on the Discord. The folks on the Discord might notice that I actually played Leyline Axe in my pre-release deck, and I got the like full extended art, like fancy version. I was like, all right, well, literally like matter of hours ago was talking shit about this card, so
Yeah.
now I have to play it. Um, and it was generally terrible. I think the first two matches, I always drew it just at really awkward times when I needed something, and then I just draw this like 7 mana,
Shit.
like +1/+1
Yeah.
card, and I was like, oh, all right, I play this Leyline Axe. Here go. Like, I don't have 7 mana to also equip it, so I guess it just feels like a real dud of a turn. But
Hmm.
then in my final round, we went to 3 games. I had Leyline Axe in my opener all 3 times. And the third time I mulliganed, and then because I didn't have Leyline Axe in the
Yeah,
hand.
yeah,
So
of course.
yeah, so I mulliganed, and then the hand was Leyline Axe, Healer's Hawk, 5 lands. And I was like, oh, well, we're keeping this.
Yeah.
And I was on the play, so I was like, I'm gonna keep this, are we good? And the guy's just like, do you have the axe again? I was like, I have the axe again. Put it down. And then I like played Healer's Hawk. He's just like, are you fucking kidding me? And I was like, yep, here we go. I am like basket all my eggs in
Yeah.
it. Like,
This is
and
it.
then I drew another piece of equipment, which was like I forget what it's called, but it's this angel equipment. It gives +2/+0, basically, in
Oh
this
yeah, but
scenario
also gives indestructible and hexproof when you play it,
for
right?
1 turn, and it gives
Unlike
it
Flash.
flying, I think.
It gives it flying, which is
But for the
help.
Healer's Hawk situation, all
Yeah.
it was doing was a very expensive +2/+0, but I
Hmm.
was cool with that on my double strike, lifelink, flying trampler. And my opponent had a pretty good draw, but their draw did not include removal, and it's
Hmm.
very difficult to race the 4/2 double strike flying lifelink trample.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much that was just
The,
it. And they hung in there for a while, and then finally found like a flyer and are doing the math on like blocking or whatever. And he's like, wait, does it have trample too? I'm like, yes, it has trample too. He's like, oh, okay, well, whatever then. Like, I guess you win. He was like, I think, a better sport about it than I'm painting, but he was trying to do all the math on like chump blocking and counterattack. He's like, oh, you're gonna gain 8 life, and then he forgot that this thing
he's just dead.
also tramples.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that was a fun match for me. Um,
I just
So
love that, like, yeah. So if you didn't hear last week's episode, we were talking a bunch of shit about the Leyline axe. And so it was so funny seeing you post in the Discord like your board state. I was just like, oh my God.
Healer's Hawk, full art leyline axe. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Oh God, that's so funny. I love that so much.
Yeah. And as soon as, of course, I saw it. And I think it was one of the first packs I opened or the second pack. And I was just like, all right, yeah,
Yep.
that
Of
makes
course.
sense. We're doing
Yep.
this. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I was like my pre-release was basically just playing Abzan ramp kind of. And the reason I decided to play I was really just like green white. I had just all my bombs were in all those colors. Primarily was the quilled worm thing.
Oh,
Um
yeah.
the
That's a
quilled
house.
great
Yeah.
worm. That thing's gross.
Hmm.
But my lands, my mana was so good, and I had a Runescar demon that I was like, I had three jungle hollows and the black white one, as well as two evolving wilds. I was like, okay, I could definitely just splash a Runescar demon just because it just
Why not?
great. I'll play my 6/6 and then go get my worm, and then I was like, cool, this will be great. Um, and so, but the rest of my deck, I just didn't have any 3-drop creatures, like zero. I was like,
Is
well,
that just your thing when you play sealed, you play
yeah,
Abzan decks with like really suspicious splashes?
yeah. That wasn't suspicious though. That was a great splash. I had actually had good lands. And when I was you shut up.
I'm allowed to
I,
make fun of you because you top aided with that deck. So
yeah, but it was also just like green, black, and white bombs, and then just figure out the
that's
rest.
your thing.
That's
That's
my
your
thing, I
thing.
guess. For some reason, I don't know why. Um,
Oh, that's Abzan Bombs guy. Yeah, he'll
yeah,
be
oh
playing
yeah,
Abzan Bombs.
he just always does somehow.
Yeah.
He just opens all the Abzan bombs and goes, "Well, I didn't get any basic lands, but I got all these duels." Like, it just that's also happened at that tournament that we went to for OTJ. It was just like everyone's like, "How did you get so many deserts?" I'm like, "I don't know. Oh, I just
Yeah,
had
it's
all of
every
them,
single pack out.
and they're all in the
And
colors I
they're all
need."
in Abzan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just like so
It's like I
unfair.
want to accuse you of cheating, but if you were gonna cheat, this isn't what you would
Two,
do.
like yeah, yeah.
Do I dare accuse you of being a terrible cheater?
You're, I know you're cheating, but like you suck at it. But you're,
Yeah.
I don't, but you're still winning somehow. I don't
But
know.
maybe you're actually brilliant.
Yeah,
Who would accuse you of doing this?
yeah. Oh gosh.
That's
Uh,
awesome. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
anyways, it's been so much fun. Uh really excited to keep drafting. Uh and I was gonna say about the Leyline Axe too, part of that was I was blue-white flyers, right?
Mhm.
If this card is good, this is where it's gonna be good,
Totally.
So let's take it for a spin. It's high variance, I think. Like if it's not in your opener, it's terrible.
Hmm. Yeah.
Maybe it's just bad.
Yeah.
If it's in your opener and you have cheap flyers,
Creatures
it
or
was pretty
flyers.
good. It was
Yeah.
it was it was quite good in those situations.
Hmm.
But one of the games I lost because like I had that and then I just didn't have the support to like I still lost because I didn't have the time to like spend that 3 mana to equip it because my
Right.
opponent was curving out.
Hmm.
And like I didn't have a healer's hawk, so I didn't have lifelink to mean like you just can't race me kind of thing.
Hmm.
So, and I think there was an option to equip my creature with it, but it's like I just lose this game if they have a removal spell if I do that. So I felt like I had to keep developing my board. It just like never really materialized, and I kind of was
Right.
just a card down.
Hmm.
So even in the dream situation of it being in the opener, I still felt kind of encumbered by it.
Just because it costs 3 to equip, not two,
Yeah,
or
it's just
something.
so expensive to equip. And then drawing it straight up is ridiculous. Like 4 for this does nothing in limited, and then another 3, which is often another turn
Hmm.
to equip it. It's like 2 full turns to equip this thing a lot of the time. I think we rightfully ripped on it, But it was funny that like the last game of my pre-release was solely decided by jamming this thing on a 1-1 and going to town.
That's so funny. God, I love that. Hilarious. Um, Sweet. Well, Jeff, with our first sips episodes, we forgot to say that this is our first sips, our first thoughts of Foundations. We like to do this thing where we talk about cards we think are worth a slot in your standard decks.
Oh.
Um, are you ready to go to our worth a slot segment, Jeff?
I am ready. I was gonna say like traditionally, I think when we started, we weren't always like, talking about standard. Like we reserved the right to be like, I think this card's good in Explorer,
Hmm.
but it just kind of has morphed into
It
the
has.
default is standard.
It makes it a little bit easier when you're talking about cards, I think, as well. Um,
Yeah, so you're not jumping around.
absolutely. Um, but yeah, so Jeff, you always do the honors. Would you like to explain to us the rating system we have for our worth of slots?
I would love to, Zach. So
Fantastic.
our worthless slots are baseball metaphors, I believe. And so
Baseball.
the first one is a layup.
Hmm. Totally.
And this is something that is definitely going to be worth a slot. No questions asked. You can feel good about crafting this. Then we have a three-pointer, classic baseball three-pointer.
Hmm.
And this is something that we think has potential. And
Hmm.
like there is a world where standard evolves in such a way that this becomes a thing, but it's not guaranteed. The confidence level is a little lower. And then half court, this is kind of like probably not, but we would love it if this happened. Generally, just for calling out like cool cards that we personally enjoy,
Hmm.
but have acknowledge our. You probably shouldn't actually spend a wild card on these ones. And
Yes.
then we like to go even deeper on the value train here. We talk about cards that are overrated and cards that are underrated. And so it's not necessarily that like a card that's overrated, you shouldn't ever craft it or you should feel bad about crafting it, or that you should definitely craft an underrated card. It's just mostly like it's just mostly in response to like a hype train or lack thereof, right?
Yeah.
So I know it's called worth a slot, and you might think, okay, underrated card is something I should definitely craft. Not always the case. I think
Hmm.
should listen to what we have to say about it and then decide if you want to craft it.
For
But
sure.
usually those are cards that we're like, why aren't people talking about this?
Yeah.
And then overrated is like, why are people talking about this?
Exactly. Um, awesome. Because as everyone knows, wildcards are the most important thing, the most important currency in Arena. It's not gold, not gems,
Next,
wildcards.
next to pets.
Yes, next to pets. Yeah, of course. You can trade your pets very easily. You can just
Yeah,
sell them back to the store to get free drafts, you know.
yeah.
Um, anyway,
Very, very
Jeff,
liquid currency.
since you have eloquently explained our system, and you definitely said all the right words, um, I think I'll go first with our
Definitely
layups.
correctly
Um,
identified the sport that the
yeah.
yeah, everything's named after.
Yes. Yes. So I think this has been a really hard segment for me personally. Um, just
Historically or this week of
this
this show.
week, okay. Well, also sometimes historically, okay. Um, but sometimes layups are usually the cards that people have been talking about, or like absolutely like this is the home run slam dunk. You're going to put this in your decks. You're going to see this all the time.
Yeah.
It's going to be great. Uh, this has been harder. I think it's just because it's a core set. You're not always sure about the power level of some stuff, or um, just all of these things. You know, like it can just be hard to be like, oh, this one's for sure. You know, I think there's a lot of cards coming into the format as well, so it just it just doesn't feel amazing to me. But I am picking a card that I think is good. I think we were talking about it a little bit in our Discord, and this is a card that I could definitely see play in some top decks, or just has more of the quality of stuff that Standard already has. So I'm gonna pick Kiora, the Rising Tide. So this is 2 and a blue for a 3/2 legendary creature, Merfolk Noble at rare. And Kiora says when it enters, I was gonna say battlefield. Oh gosh, it's so weird. When Kiora enters, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. And then Kiora has thresholds. So whenever Kiora attacks, if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you may create a Scion of the Deep. It's a legendary 8/8 blue octopus creature token. Um, so
Yeah,
there's
why did
some.
it say enters the battlefield? There's no other time enters triggers. It'd just be ridiculous to say that many words when you could just say enters.
I know I'm just so used to saying it that, obviously. Um, Anyway, I was looking at different creatures and I wanted one that had an effect that happened right when like right when they enter, right?
Yeah.
And Kiara definitely does that thing. You draw cards, you discard, and then you might get value later, which is kind of a lot of the cards in this set feel like that, where it's like, hey, there's this cool creature. It might be good later. So
Mhm.
I was really looking for something that actually had effect as it enters. Um, as well as there's a lot of different graveyard type of decks in standard, and I would be interested to see, this is some of the discussion we had in the Discord, if Giora is going to be in some of the like Azorius Oculus decks or things like that, or
Feels like a
whatever
very
else
natural fit. Yeah.
graveyardy stuff, anything that already wants to put cards in their graveyard. um, I don't know if this doesn't really feel like it's going to be 4 copies, but I can definitely see, if I see this card around, I'm not going to be surprised. Is basically the
Yeah.
where I kind the conclusion I came to.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. Coming into this, we were talking about like, should we restrict ourselves to new cards? So cards that aren't reprints. Um, Kind of decided don't necessarily have to do that, but I was
No.
looking at options for both. Like, okay, if I'm allowing all cards, what would I choose?
Hmm.
And if I was focused on new cards, Kiora was going to be my pick for this slot of like
Oh, well, that you make
um
me feel that. Thanks.
I was like, I think this card's really good. I was also looking at Kellen. I think that's the card's decent.
Hmm.
But just mono red has so many good options right now that makes me a little uncertain around that one. I think the card itself's great, but
Hmm.
that's why I was hesitant there. I think in the end, I did decide for a reprint. And, part of that is like the reason we were thinking, oh, should we avoid reprints on this is like people might already have these cards. And so the concept of should you craft them is a little moot. But not everyone already has them. And,
It's true.
so let's just maybe people haven't played with these cards and don't know if they're good or not. So maybe it's best that one of us picks a reprint and one of us picks a new card. So
All right.
to that end, I will pick a reprint.
All right. Perfect.
Uh, I think there's some bias coming through here too because I fucking love this card. But
Okay.
the card I've selected is Scavenging Ooze. Uh,
Yeah.
this card, I think, is poised to be effective in standard. Green black is a deck that has been in and out of tier one, but has always been competitive. And right now, with Oculus being such a strong deck, Scavenging Ooze kind of laughs at Oculus a little bit, um, because you just hold that one green mana open and they can never really do their thing. And it stops them from like casting Oculus faithfully as well. By just end step, you just get rid of their graveyard. I think graveyard hate is pretty good, but what makes Scavenging Ooze so good is like it's a card that these mid-range decks want to play anyways, as just like even if your opponent had nothing going on with their graveyard, just like a 2-drop that incidentally hits things and grows and gains life. Like this is a card that you're interested anyways in green black.
Hmm.
And there actually is a lot of graveyard stuff going on. Like most decks have some way to do it. Even the mirror match, right? You could peg that Hollow Knight or the
The
Knight,
Mosswood Dread Knight.
uh,
Yeah.
Mosswood Dread Knight, yeah. Hollow Knight's like a video game. I don't know why that came to mind, but
No, I was
I
thinking
was
the
just picturing
exact
the
same
art,
thing.
and I was like, it's very hollow,
Yeah. No,
light.
but
Um,
But yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Like, even if it's not specifically like a graveyard type of strategy, I think that any deck that you want to be against it, where you can like have a blocker that starts to get really big and gains you life, which is really important. And a lot of the rest of the deck, besides like Shieldred, I guess, doesn't necessarily gain you life in the Golgari deck. I guess the cottage does. You get food eventually. Um,
yeah, it's very slow. Like you have to
yeah,
attack with a creature land that often
exactly.
takes your whole turn, and then
Where this is like, I'm still gonna kill your creatures. Like most of the deck is like destroy, like kill your opponent's creatures, and then Scavenger Use gets to eat it, get bigger, gain life, cushion
yeah,
you so that you can win the long game because that's what you're gonna do if you're playing against any of the aggressive, uh, like prowess decks or anything like that as well.
yeah.
So
And often you eat your own stuff because you're not that committed to like it.
don't really care. Yeah, because
Yeah,
they're not really on the game plan of the virtue of persistence as much as they used to. That was like a few
yeah.
sets ago. So.
And that would be a decision you might make, right? You play a little less, creature recursion type
Mhm,
things if you're playing this to give yourself that option. This card was a staple in like modern
mhm,
green mid-range decks for a very long time. And I think it's just coming from that power level. I guess the easiest way to think about it is like the floor on this card is real high and the ceiling is also quite high.
mhm.
And so it's like, at the very worst, this card's going to be decent. And in certain matchups, it's going to feel like you get a freebie in game one, you know?
Yeah, totally. And then you can kind of do whatever you'd like with it afterwards. But I will say, just Scavenging Ooze is also just a house and draft. Like, don't
Oh, yeah.
take this card. Like, I had a
Yeah.
deck with two of them, and it was amazing. People were
What? That's
passing me
awesome.
Scoozes. I'm like, that
They
give,
weren't in green, I guess, but
yeah. But Scavenging Ooze, that's you
because
know
creatures naturally go to the graveyard in limited. So this
exactly.
is this is one of those good early, good late cards that we rave about in limited.
Exactly. Sometimes you just look at this and you're like, oh yeah, it just kind of like if you want to stop your opponent from doing graveyardy things. No, no, it just is good. So,
And there's actually a healthy amount of that in this format of just like, it's
mhm.
nice to your opponent can't cast their Macabre Waltz.
Yeah,
Just not
exactly.
gonna do anything.
Like
Yeah.
Zombifies in this format. Yeah, make
Yeah.
sure they get rid of that.
There's
Uh,
the 3/2 flyer that's the Gravedigger. Like
mhm.
there's a lot of that kind of stuff
There's a
going on.
ton. There's
So
the fiendish panda. The like. There's a ton of things
the
that
thing
get
that was
stuff out of
supposed to be
there.
called Pandemonium or
Panda. What? It was supposed to be called Pandemonium.
yeah, I think there was some like pseudo controversy around that card because what it was spoiled in I believe Spanish and the Spanish name was Pandemonium, like
Oh,
Pandemonium.
Pandemonium.
And then everyone was super psyched about that, and then the English version was Fiendish Panda. And
Oh,
everyone
I
was like,
didn't
"What the
see that at
fuck is
all.
that?
That's so funny. I didn't see
That's
any of that.
unacceptable."
Well,
But
now
it's
I
clearly
know.
just like the Spanish translators having fun or something.
Mhm.
But
Just that's actually hilarious. That's actually hilarious.
yeah,
Um, no, I
learned that
like
at the
that. Like,
pre-release, and it was like somebody was telling the story, and then someone else was like, "You talking about Pandemonium? Yeah, I'm so mad about that."
yeah.
And I was just like, "Okay, it's a real thing, I guess."
This is also just remember like if they had printed a card called Pandemonium, I'm sure they would have been like, "Look at this stupid thing, blah blah blah. We hate this
Right.
name or whatever."
Yeah.
But like Magic players do want it. So when we do talk about like jokey names that are kind of stupid or whatever, like
Oh yeah.
I know we're getting in the future, and I know Universes Beyond is coming for the jokey names. Just know that almost everybody actually likes them. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to warm myself up to it, and hearing more people be like, "Oh, I wish this card was called Pandemonium and it's a panda." Like
Yeah.
that's the
But
kind of jokes that I think
and this
work.
has been like Mark Rosewater's push for a long time to like
Yeah,
push the silliness, like
of
the
Magic.
acceptable silliness level of Magic for a
Yeah.
while. And
Well, yeah, Mark wants everything to be just as silly as can
yeah,
be.
we can't let him go crazy,
Yeah,
but he has generally been right that like we were maybe too rigid before, and
yeah.
we can have some fun as well.
So yeah, I mean, Mark was the one who like first started full art lands. So
Yeah,
Like
those are obviously a
he
huge hit.
obviously. We're snake drafting this as we always do, Jeff. So
Yeah,
give us your three pointer.
I had zero trouble locking this one in. This was the easiest and first card I locked in.
Okay.
It is also a reprint,
Okay, perfect.
but is a reprint that is close to my heart,
Hmm.
and I've been talking about this archetype getting a lot of support in Foundations, and that makes
Hmm.
me so happy. And so the card that I'm putting as my three-pointer is Immersturm Predator.
Oh, I thought you might talk about this card. Okay.
So this is two black red. I mean, I'm sure everyone knows the card, but it's two
Hmm.
black red for a 3/3 flying. Whenever it becomes tapped, exile up to one target creature card from a graveyard and put a +1/+1 counter on it. And you can sack another creature, and this creature gains indestructible until end of turn and tap it. This card is a house in
Hmm.
black red sacrifice decks. It is a very unusual card. They almost never print cards that do this anymore, where you can just sack creatures for free.
Hmm.
They have realized that that's a bit too powerful, at least to put on cheap creatures. So this is kind of what you have to do to get that kind of ability. And it comes with a bit of a cost that it taps it. But then it also tapping it, sometimes is a good thing here. So
Hmm.
they gave it that rider. The last time I played like traditional black red sacrifice, not like the anvil type stuff, the
Hmm.
artifacts and the enchantment sacrifice version that they've been building for us recently. Like I want old school, like we have blood artists, we have a bunch of cheap creatures, we have village rights, and we have
Hmm.
this guy at the top end, and we have all that now. And so I'm like, that's definitely my first standard exploration is going to be all about that. There's going to be this at the top end. There's actually a couple of different like sub blood artist. You do the four of the whatever blood artist it's called in this set,
Yeah,
but
it's
there's
like
actually a couple other
Vengeful Blood
options
Witch.
at
Yeah.
three.
Hmm.
Vengeful Bludgeon, yeah. Super psyched for this archetype. We're gonna play Furnace Reigns for sure.
Oh,
Um,
okay. All
oh
right.
yeah, oh yeah, we're doing it old school. We're stealing your stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And I love that
Steel
the Furnace
Sack.
Reigns generates the treasure for the Village Rites, Corrupted Conviction.
Yeah,
Um,
whatever. I think they reprinted Village Rites in this set, right? Or is it still called Corrupted Conviction in this set?
I think, oh, don't get my hopes up like that, Zach.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
You
because
keep talking.
now I'm gonna be devastated if I can't use my cool Village Rites. Um, but yeah, this card is awesome, and apparently there's a theme on my picks of cards that exile things from graveyards and
Hmm.
get +1/+1 counters. Um, but
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at this card because it just obviously reminded me of you and Call Time and all of that, like all of those decks that you had showed, um, just kind of back then, and how just fun that archetype was. But the other thing is that like having a free sack out like that is, hey, I can sacrifice all my creatures before they get exiled with Sunfall. And then if I'm playing black, there's ways for me to get things back, or
yeah,
do different stuff. So being able to
plus your
sack
token sucks now, right?
exactly your token is
Yeah,
super tiny. I obviously lose my big dragon, but everything else is in the yard, and I have more access to the yard than exile. So that does seem kind of interesting. Um, so yeah,
yeah.
I had thought about maybe maybe taking that card, but I'm not going to. I'm not.
I have fond memories of this guy. I think I narrowly missed out a top eight of one of those old like SCG events.
Oh,
Those
really?
like 9 or 10 or
Hmm.
whatever plus rounders. I think I top 16 that one, and with the old like there was Extus, which I forget what the other
Yeah,
side of it was, but it's
from
that was the real reason we were
Strixhaven.
playing for that card, yeah.
Hmm.
And this guy he was the best card in the deck basically, because whenever you had it, you were just like, I can sack anything at will.
Hmm.
Yes, my power is unlocked. Like my deck actually does the thing now because, and it's crazy to me that they used to just print this on cards. Like
Hmm.
there were one drops that could sack stuff for free.
Yeah,
Like, um, and so they've since realized that's a mistake, and they make it costly for you. But
hmm, they
yeah,
do.
I just love that it exists in the format again.
It's back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love seeing this stuff. My three pointer is actually a card. I'm taking it as a three pointer, but that doesn't mean I like it, and I actually kind
Okay.
of hate it.
Oh,
Um, and I didn't really think very much of this until it kicked me in the teeth multiple times today.
okay. Okay.
So this card is Abyssal Harvester. This is one of the new cards. It's one black black for a 3/2 creature demon warlock at rare. Uh, and that's all. Just kidding. Of course not.
Yeah.
That's probably the majority of this is why it's a three pointers because a lot of the time in standard it will just die to cut down. That's kind of a
Oof.
reason why I was like, ugh,
Yeah.
I that's why I kind of skimmed over this card when I was looking at all the cards before it. But this is the actual text of the card. You can tap it, so on your following turn, exile target card from a graveyard that was put there this turn. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a nightmare in addition to its other types. Then exile all other nightmare tokens you control. So basically, whenever a creature card goes to a graveyard, you can tap this and then you get a copy of it on your side of the battlefield, but you can only have one copy of something at a time.
Yeah.
Um, this isn't the. This is kind of the card that ends up winning games when you have exhausted your resources. It's the type of thing where, like, when this is on the battlefield and there are other cards, you can't do combat as you would normally would want to do. You can't attack into things. You can't kill their stuff because if you kill their stuff, they get a token of it, so it doesn't matter. So you always have to kill this first. It's kind of like a black version of like Skrelv almost, where it's
Mhm.
like I have to kill this first because if I kill the other thing, you just get it. Or if I
Right.
sacrifice my thing, you get it. Or if you kill my thing, you get it. Or if we trade, you pick your favorite one and you get it. And like any ETBs that happen, which are really important in standard, or anything else that you would like to do, you just have it. Now it does easily die to removal, so that's why it's this is like a caveat,
And
but
it's slow.
it's very slow.
Yeah.
Um, but this card was extremely impressive in draft, and to the
Oh, I
point
got
where
I got
it
slapped by this card in one of my games at the pre-release.
it was so infuriating um, losing my Galta, and then they get my Galta, and then they attack me with it was horrible.
Yeah.
And being like, every flyer that's going to kill me next turn, I can't even kill because then you just get to make another one. Obviously, I know draft is very different than standard, but it was the type of thing where like alarm bells were going off to be like, this is so irritating. And like
Hmm.
it changes the way I have to play the game so much that now I have to start thinking about is this a card that can be in other places because this is so annoying. And I actually hate this card so much. So like I really do. Like I hate
Yeah.
it. Um so it's the kind of thing where like obviously black decks have so many different um options at three. But in some sort of mono black deck where you want specific cards that might be needed to kill, there are multiple different infinite combos in mono black right now. You could play the life lost, life gain one, or the lose half your life again one. You can do both of those
Yeah.
at the same time. And if this guy's just out, you could just be like, if I lose a piece, I can get another version of that piece or whatever. Um,
Yeah. I'm somewhat interested in this in my Agatha's Soul Cauldron deck
okay,
because because if you
give that
if
ability to all your creatures.
yeah, like when this has haste, it's
Hmm.
one of those cards that when if this had haste, you'd be like, what the fuck is that? Right?
Hmm.
And so Agatha's Soul Cauldron, a lot of the times, is about cheating that restriction that
Hmm.
cards with these activated abilities are not meant to be able to activate them right away. And uh, the Cauldron is a way around that. And so, and it's already a graveyard based deck, right? So it's
Hmm.
like, I could see some shenanigans where you throw a copy of this or two into your Soul Cauldron builds, and it like accelerates things or just gives you an alternative game plan beyond being all in on whatever combo you're playing.
Hmm.
Because, Cauldron's almost always going to be at
Combo-y,
least some amount of combo in there.
for sure.
And maybe this gives you kind of a backup plan or just another way to achieve it. Um, so I'm kind of eyeing that with this card. But that deck for me is an explorer deck, or it's a yes, just call
Keeper
it a
thing.
pioneer deck at this point.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, I definitely can see that we haven't seen Agatha Soul Cauldron in standard in quite a long time.
yeah,
But I just think, like, I don't know, this is probably on the cusp of like actually being like a half court shot. And
mhm.
I fully am aware that this card is not nearly as good as what I'm saying, but the recency bias of hating it so much has bumped it up
Yeah,
to I got to talk about this stupid fucking card because I hate it.
gotta love recency. I love biases of all form when it comes
Hmm.
to evaluating Magic cards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is another one if you want to go on my stream and see me melt down to this fucking thing. God. Anyway, more on that in a bit,
All
actually.
right, well, if that's your three-pointer, what's your half-court shot?
Well, now that I kind of went so so intense on this three-pointer, um, half court shots are they're usually just lots of fun,
Yeah.
right? And I want to have a little bit more fun. Um, and I think this is more so a please don't actually craft this, but I just want an excuse to talk about this card.
Yeah.
Um,
It's usually what it is.
Yeah, it's usually what it is. I will be talking about a reprint, and I think that the fact that they're keeping this in standard for so long and giving people an opportunity to try to do this over and over again and continue to fail forever is amazing. This is one of the things that they should definitely do every once in a while. Be like, hey, here's an archetype. You can try to do this. It's never going to work, but you
Yeah,
can
it's
try.
always going to be bad, but we are providing it to you.
Yes. Which is Maze's End. So we haven't had Maze's End in standard in a
Nice.
long time, basically since it was printed. It's a mythic land. It enters tapped. It taps for a colorless mana, and you can pay 3 mana and tap it. Return this land to your hand. And it says search your library for a gate card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. If you control 10 or more gates with different names, you win the game. So this is just a different type of like it's basically a control deck where you have all the different Ravnica gates, which are also all in standard, and you try to win the game just using this card instead. The rest of it is literally just wiping the board, making sure you don't die. Um, it's not necessarily a deck I enjoy playing, but I know people who absolutely love this. We have a friend that has a commander deck that actually plays this card, which I think is also hilarious. Also to note, Expedition Map is also in standard, so that's a helpful card that
Oh,
goes
snap.
gets Maze's
Now we're
End.
cooking with gas.
Yeah, so we do have some tutors for this. It's not just kind of like hoping for the best. Um, we don't have a at the time this was printed. No, we didn't have Gates Ablaze. That was in a different Ravnica set. But in any case, there's like Slag Storm. There's a couple different things. We also obviously still have Brotherhood's End and different like cheap removal spell or like board wipes as well as like Day of Judgment and all those things. Something could be put together where you're trying to figure out how you can ramp and also keep yourself alive. Um, but like I said, this is a terrible strategy. It's not winning any tournaments, but it's fun. And you know, if you really think about it, you just need 4 copies of Maze's End. That's a mythic. And all the gates are commons. It's so cheap.
Would love for it to be a thing.
I would love for someone to beat me with this at some point.
Yeah, yeah,
I think
exactly.
that's really what it is I want to see this at some point, but I acted
Realistically, this is not a deck you want to be tier one, but it's
no,
a deck I would
because
love to be like tier two, or tier three. Like it can actually win games. It's just not very good.
well, to be fair, Jeff, if this deck ended up being tier one for any, whatever reason, that would also mean that the main decks against this deck would all be land destruction. And I mean,
Oh,
I would
and maybe that would actually prompt them to print
Stone
Stone
Rain.
Rain, baby.
I mean, it would it'd be pretty interesting playing like actively having to play like against land destruction because the big menace is like a Maze's End deck. I don't see that ever happening in any
Yeah,
sort of
that's a different
that's a
one.
different universe.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's a universe I'm interested in being a part of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if you subscribe to the many worlds theory, I still
Yes.
don't think there's a world where that's the case.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, I just love to see this card back. And it's so bad, but so just so funny and good at the
Yeah.
same time.
Okay, so for mine, I would like to request your permission to do something here,
Oh.
which is to actually select two cards.
Oh. Okay. 2 cards?
Yeah.
All right, what
I, I
I'm
can I can make
interested.
do with one, but I
Do
will
they
have to talk about the second card
That's fine.
either way.
Pick an official one and then you'll talk about the second one. How about that?
Okay.
Okay.
Well then, oh, what's the better one to pick? Okay, the official pick
Okay.
is going to be Harmless Offering, which is two in a red for a
Yes.
sorcery. Target opponent gains control of target permanent you control. That doesn't sound very good, Zach. That does not sound like a great card,
It
to
does
be
not.
perfectly honest. I usually get completely blown out when my opponent plays this card that one of my permanents goes to them.
Hmm.
And so playing it for them also takes up my mana and my turn. Feels
And your
like
card.
feels like a mana in my card for my
Yeah.
hand. It feels like a bit of a losing bat like proposition here.
Seems pretty
But
rough.
but wait, there's also a card in this set called Demonic Pact. This is 2 black for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose one that has not been chosen. This enchantment deals 4 damage to any target, and you gain 4 life. I like that.
Mm.
Target opponent discards 2 cards. Not bad. Draw 2 cards. Now we're talking. That's why we play this card. And you lose the game. Hmm.
I don't like that one so much.
It does a lot of great stuff, but if I don't win the game in 4 turns,
Jeff, the card that I picked said you win the game. Why did you pick a card that says you lose the game?
well, let me tell you, because I have just come up with a genius strategy that no one has thought of before. And that is we can play Demonic Pact, okay, and get all of the good things, and then we can cast Harmless Offering to give it to our opponent. And the only remaining selection is you lose the game. And they would then lose the game
Oh my
for free.
gosh, that is such a novel idea. That's
I
amazing.
know. Yes, this is an old school like combo. Came out. I mean, old school, a few years ago that these cards
A
came
few
out.
years ago,
Uh,
like good. It was a while ago.
don't age me, Zach.
Okay, sorry.
Don't age me.
It was like
It was definitely within the decade.
I don't know about that one.
Um,
When was Shadows over Innistrad?
oh boy.
Yeah.
Anyways, uh, I think like this combo was barely good enough at that time for standard. I think people played it, but probably shouldn't have.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah, keep up the tradition.
It's almost certainly not good enough for the standard. They're just probably better like just cards that don't require you to draw other specific cards in order to not be terrible.
Mhm.
And I think the main weakness here is not necessarily like losing to Demonic Pact if you don't draw your Harmless Offering in time. It's the fact that you have to play Harmless Offering, which doesn't do anything else.
Mhm.
So you maybe try to get creative and find another way to make Harmless Offering not suck. But Harmless Offering naturally, and that's why I picked it as the long shot, naturally is a terrible Magic card and really requires you to have it's a huge deck building constraint. And no matter how you build your deck, there's going to be a lot of the time that Harmless Offering is a dead card. And so that's why this combo is just not really acceptable for current standard. But it's possible. Like the black and red cards are really good in standard right now. There's a lot of really great ones. You could build this weird black red control deck where this is part of the game plan. And I would like just like you were saying, I would love to lose to this. If someone
Yes.
donates Demonic Pact to me and that's the only option left, I would happily accept that. And my favorite is when, just for like tempo reasons, they have to donate the demonic pact like a turn early or something. It's just
Mhm.
like, all right, you have a turn to win because you're gonna lose next turn. And I'm like, that's great. I love that.
Yeah. What I want to do is I want my opponent to give me Demonic Pact after doing all this stuff, and then I just torch the tower and bargain it away, and then kill one of their
Yeah,
creatures.
that's the other thing. There's like randomly ways to hose it as well.
Like just sacrifice enchantments. No, but I love that
But
so much.
when do you have to do that? Because
You'd have to do it on their turn, I think.
yeah, because
Because
demon or like have the mana open and do it in your draw step or something. Like
no, because this is at your upkeep, right? So
or yeah, oh,
it would go on the
right.
stack. You lose the game would go on the stack, and they
Right.
would.
It would go on the stat. Yeah.
You have to
So,
have the mana open and do it on their turn. But
or you like blink it or something. I don't know.
that would be interesting too. Just like I'm gonna reset everything.
I think it goes back to them though. Yeah.
Oh, does it? Oh, then you have to discard your cards. I guess like maybe you could have like at this point in the game you wouldn't have the perfect card, you know. But anyway, I love that pick. That's so fun. And it's just it shows you again like, hey, these cards were not they're not in the actual draft set. They are part of like a bunch of other products that are also in standard. So take a moment, look at some of those because there's a lot of cards in standard that you actually aren't drafting on Arena. And this is actually a good moment to mention. I forgot to say this before, but like Arena, a lot of these cards through the collector boxes and everything, blah 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 blah. They introduced them and gave them to players for free. I think you have a couple copies of these cards already because they gave like a ton of what is it the new player decks? They're just chock full of a bunch of these cards. It's like 50 random rares that are just like sorry, 50 rares. They're not random. They're all the same. Everybody gets the same ones, but
Yeah.
they feel random because they're just like, oh, we just get
Was it
demonic
just
pact.
me or did I have to fucking sit there and click through
I had to click through
forever?
every fucking card, yeah.
It was like
So that's why,
somebody trolled me on the dev team over
yeah,
there.
I know. That's why I remembered. I saw Harmless Offering. I'm like, oh, sick.
Yeah.
But yes, you have some of these cards already, which is pretty cool. All right, Jeff, do you have any overrated or underrated cards?
I do have an overrated card, Zach. I
Hmm.
do have an overrated card. So this is a card that you should just not play in standard. And I know you're going to.
Hmm.
Everyone's looking at me like, Jeff, what are you talking about? This card's amazing. You might even say, like, it's almost as good as Reckoner Bankbuster. First of all, okay, it's not almost as good as Reckoner Bankbuster. And second of all, Reckoner Bankbuster itself was overrated. So the fact that this card is even in this set is an affront to me, and I believe the entire Magic community. And so stop playing it. It's not good. But also keep playing it because it's how I win games. And so the card I'm talking about is Maze Mind Tome. This is a 2 mana artifact. It taps to put a page counter on it or some, yeah, page counter. Uh, and you can scry, I think. and then you can tap 2 and put a page counter to draw a card, and when there are 4 more page counters, exile it, and you gain 4 life. Terrible, terrible. Just a bad card. It's way too slow. You know, it's especially in the aggressive meta we have now, you might think, oh, it helps me like scry and then eventually gain 4 life. Too slow. It's too
Hmm.
slow. And the rate on drawing cards is too bad. Like, think about, compare this card to like Divination. By the time you draw 2 cards off this, you've spent twice as much mana as you would have on Divination. So, just not into this.
Yeah, not even divination, but quick study, the new divination.
Yeah, whatever the new Divination is called. It's instant right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What a time. What a time to be alive,
I
Zach.
know.
Divination is now an instance.
It's crazy. But yes, if you have ever listened to the show, you know Jeff hates this card and or not hates it, but thinks it's terrible.
I just think it's
And
bad and everyone plays it. It's like everyone has that card that just like the community loves or
mhm,
like has agreed is good and is worth like a slot in the metagame and you don't get it at all,
mhm.
even after playing with and against it. And you're just like, I'm just gonna die on this hill. This card blows.
Yeah.
Maybe if it like becomes a weird super control meta mirror match kind of thing, like fine, the card's good in those. Yeah, good. It's even strong, but it's fine in those matchups. But like, pretty sure there's a lot of aggro in standard right now that's just gonna laugh at you if you play this card
Mhm.
on turn 2. And
That is true. I will. That's exactly what I want you to do.
yeah,
Is play that stupid card.
but people were doing that even when this was legal before, and
Hmm.
there were good aggro decks. And I would just be like, okay, I guess I get to win for free because I'm on the play, and your turn 2 was to cast Maze Mind Tome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't main deck it if you're gonna play it. If you feel like you must play it, not in the main deck, folks.
Or just leave it for cube, everybody.
Yeah.
Just
Or you
don't.
know what? Stat four copies main deck. I'll see you on the ladder.
Yeah. I love that. Oh. Um. I don't know if my card is like super overrated, really, but it's a card that like I don't like, and I want it to not be
That's how
around.
that's how I used mine. So
Yeah.
I still like this
Um,
card.
this is a new card. It's I Jeff, I want you to actually tell me what it is without looking. This is
Okay.
Sire of the Seven Deaths. It's the new Eldrazi.
Oh dear God.
Uh,
There's no way
can
I'm
you
gonna get this
can you tell me what this card is? It's French vanilla. It's very French vanilla, but
right. I'm gonna guess it's a 7/7.
yes.
I know there's a bunch of sevens everywhere. It has Ward
Mhm.
7.
Yes. Well, Ward pay 7 life, yeah.
Okay. Does it have 7 abilities overall? Is that the other joke?
Yeah, Ward is one of the 7 abilities.
Okay. Menace,
Mm-hmm.
Life Link,
Yes.
Death Touch.
No.
Ow! Shoot.
All right, I could just read it.
Yeah.
But I wanted because it's so hard to remember what this fucking card does, especially on Arena, because there aren't enough of the stinking things to show you what it does. You know, like usually there's like a little pendant or something that's like this is trample and this is reach and this is whatever. So Sire of the Seven Deaths is a 7 mana 7/7 creature Eldrazi at Mythic. It has First Strike, Vigilance, Menace, Trample, Reach, Lifelink, and Ward pay 7 life.
I think
This,
it's ridiculous. It's called Sire of the Seven Deaths, and it doesn't have Death Touch.
yeah, it doesn't have Death Touch. Was one of the things I kind of thought it had when I was dealing with it today, where my opponent not only had Sire of the Seven Deaths, but the aforementioned Abyssal Harvester, who, which meant that if I killed Sire of the Seven Deaths, they just got another
Got
one,
it.
and I paid 7 life to give them a token version of it.
I understand your hatred of both these cards now.
Yes. But the other fact was that I misread this card multiple times because I'm thinking about a million different things, and then I have to like block it with multiple creatures, and I'm like, wait, it has trample? I thought it had death touch, or I thought it had anything else. Or I was mainly focused on like it has first strike, it has
It's
vigilance, it
first
has
strike,
life
yeah.
link. I was like, okay, I have to be able to block this thing and kill it because it has first strike and lifelink. But then I was like, all this shit was going through my head, and I just think that this is kind of a mistake. There's way too many things. This is them trying to like make up for the fact that when they made what's his face, that demon Grizzlebrand, that they made his mana cost 8 and everything else is 7. Like this is
Yeah,
like, hey,
that's irked somebody for years, and they're
yeah.
just like,
Literally, they're like, oh well, it'll cost 7. It'll say 7. It's a 7/7, and it has 7 abilities, and there's another 7 on the
yeah,
card.
that's all they were trying to do with this.
That's all they were trying to do. This is a joke card. Like this doesn't. I think this is like fun in Commander for Eldrazi stuff, but I think that it continues to be that Eldrazi aren't what they were supposed to be. Like Eldrazi is supposed to be like 15 mana for a giant thing that's insane. But now
Yeah.
there's 7. Are you telling me that 15 and 7 are the same now? I'm confused.
Hey man,
Like,
they already broke through that with like Thought Not Seer and shit, and you're just
well,
like,
I know, but this
that's why I hated
continues.
that set so much. It's
This
like this is
continues
not
the trend.
Eldrazi.
Yeah.
Efficient Eldrazi is stupid.
Yeah, it's just like, oh,
It's
these
not
are
the
just
point.
good creatures. Like the other
Yeah.
ones were like at least had a momentous thing. So I see putting this in your commander deck that's all about Eldrazi creatures. That's awesome. I'm really happy for that. That's totally fine.
Or in your commander deck that's all about the number 7.
That's true. Actually, that sounds much more interesting. Very slow deck, I'm sure, but like interesting. Um,
Oh boy, if turn 7 comes around and I'm
yeah.
still here,
You watch out. I'm gonna play Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
um, but anyway, this card, for all those things, I hate it, as well as I also just don't think you should be playing this card. Like, if you're playing in standard and like you're reanimating something and it's just not Atraxa or it doesn't do anything on the way in, like, what's the point?
Yeah,
Like,
that's what, like a lot of my long shot picks were like, oh, Darksteel Colossus or like Progenitus, and it's
mhm,
just like, yeah, it's just like there's just better stuff to reanimate these days.
mhm.
These things hit home for me, but
Yeah,
with a new card that doesn't even have that nostalgia, like, come on.
like, come on. Like, I don't know. It doesn't draw cards. It does. It isn't like the like Vaultborn Tyrant that when it dies you make another one and you gain life and you draw cards and you do like this just is huge. And if your opponent doesn't have 7 life, they can't kill it unless they make you sacrifice it or something. But like, or they wipe the board. Like there are
Yeah,
ways to get rid of this. Like it just doesn't do anything on the way in, and
yeah.
that's what you need your reanimator stuff to do. Like it has
It's
to
just
be
like, yeah,
immediate, and
exactly.
I think that this card is crazy, and there are a lot of 7s on it. Um,
But there aren't 7 7s.
there aren't 7 7s.
You know what I mean?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I know that there's 7 hands. Wait,
Oh,
one,
does that? Oh,
two,
maybe
three,
that.
four, five,
Hold on.
6, 7. Yeah, I think the 7 hands count as the seventh thing. There's also seven
Okay.
heads, I think.
Okay, so there's 7 in its name,
Yes, the word 7.
in its mana cost.
Yeah, 7.
Power, toughness, 7 life for the ward.
Yeah.
And then you're saying 7 hands in the art,
And
where it's
then
6.
so you could do 7 heads in the art, I think. One, two, three, four, five, six. Oh, 7. Oh, wait, is that a head? That looks like a shoulder.
But see, once we start counting things, it could be like, oh, there's 7 abilities or whatever. Like, I was
Yeah,
looking
it's
for
true.
actual 7 instances of the number or word 7.
You're right. You're
I think
right.
they only hit 5.
Okay. Oh, it's for the actual numerical thing. That's true. This
Yeah, and
could
I'm
have
willing to
been.
accept the spelling Seven in the title, right, to get to 5. But
Okay.
I feel
All
like
right.
they could
Well,
have made there be 7 7s, and flavor text would have been an easy way to jam that in.
that's true. But Jeff, if you make this a thing, they're going to make another stupid 7 card because people will complain about it.
Yeah, well, I'm just excited for Sire of the 11 Deaths.
Oh, God. Can we have Sire of Death and there's just one? There's just a picture of it, the number 1.
Ward, pay
Ward.
1 life is
No,
the only
Ward.
ability.
Ward.
Yeah, Ward.
Poor Ward, nothing.
Yeah,
It just is a trigger that goes on the stack and it goes away. Like,
I love it.
oh God.
Oh man, ever since your Brad Pitt comment, I'm just trying to think of like what's in the deck box jokes, but none of
What?
none of them are materializing.
What's in the deck box? What's in the deck box? That's funny. Oh. Oh God. Anyway, um, God, underrated cards for this. I really don't think I have underrated ones that I'm like, man, why is nobody talking about this?
Yeah,
Because ultimately, the thing that I think is most underrated is that I am just excited for all the different Kindred decks that are possible in this set. Like, I almost pick this as my like long shot, half court shot. But
mhm.
like, there are a bunch of just random lords for stuff. There's
Yeah,
like Courser Captain, which is like 2 and a blue for a 2/2 human pirate. It enters, makes a treasure, and all your pirates get +1/+1.
yeah,
This is a card that we needed when we were playing pirates like last year. So it's like, oh, this is cool. Oh, there's a goblin one too, and also skeletons and zombies, and there's a like three for elves, and like all of that has been super cool to be like, oh, I think we should just be playing Kindred decks. Like these are just fun. I
yeah,
don't know. They just seem fun.
yeah, and I love that for so many reasons. Because like, first of all, like you said, Kindred decks are fun,
Hmm.
and you know, I late it's fairly recent trend that they're starting to bring those back into maybe at least in the realm or in the conversation of competitive
Hmm.
viability, even if maybe they're not necessarily there yet. But also, like that was a huge part of Magic's past. And so
Hmm.
the nostalgia factor on these lords, it's like that was the shit back in the day. Like
Yeah.
Magic was a bunch of different,
Creatures that had
creature
different types.
types
Yeah.
that and they had their kindred and they all did slightly different things, but they all had their lord and
Hmm.
like that was such a cool part of the game. And it's, old school folks are going to really appreciate this. And then the really smart part of it, I think, is that putting a Lord in this set gives them so much flexibility moving forward
Hmm.
because this set's going to be in standard for 5 years that it's just like now we can actually make Kindred decks viable moving forward
Hmm.
without feeling like we have to jam a random Lord into the whatever set we're working on at
Yeah.
the time. It's like we have the
AKA
Lord there.
a Dominaria United, where they're like, hey, here's 5 lords that aren't supported in the draft format or anywhere.
Right. Like
And
they don't find themselves in that situation again because like,
mhm.
if they wanted pirates to kind of be a thing, there's already a pirate lord kicking around. So,
Yeah, it's always there. If you find another pirate, sweet, add it to your deck.
yeah.
They even have adaptive automaton, which is just the artifact lord. It's a
Yeah.
artifact that can be a lord for whatever creature type you want.
Mhm.
So you are able to go to standard and play your dumb whatever deck, and like whether it's good or not, it can be your deck that you get to play. Like this is the thing that has been so ingrained in like Commander, right? Like expressing yourself in your deck is really important, and it's part of the things a lot of the stuff that they talk about.
Yeah.
The fact that they at least have it as an option in Standard, even if it's not great, it's an option. It's something you could do. Is I think exactly what they need for people to be interested in at least going and playing games and trying stuff, right? At the local level, even if it's not going to win any tournaments or like put up numbers, like you could, as a player who enjoys Magic, be like, I really like elves. I can go play elves. When I play the game Magic, I can play elves. Like that's all I want to do. I'm gonna do that. And it's like, yeah, you may lose, but you can.
Yeah.
So as opposed to being like, oh, sorry, yeah, elves aren't really. There's just nothing there, And then people are like, oh, okay, well, I guess I just won't play standard then. Um, I
Totally.
I think this is a good change, and it's a great selling point for like, hey, here's like an F tier deck, but you can play it and it is cool. So
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. That's a great pick. My pick for underrated and don't know if controversial is the right word, but it could be a little, leaning that way. And, I'm gonna pick broadly again, but I feel empowered to do that because you did
Hmm.
as well. Um, I picked the temples. So,
Oh, okay.
so hear
Oh,
me
I,
out
I
here.
kind of don't like it. All right.
Yeah. So I'm seeing, or I saw some flack, online, like why the temples? Why are the
Hmm.
temples here? Um, we have a strictly, okay, we have a better version of these
Hmm.
cards already. I think this is a great card to have in your 5-year base set.
Hmm.
Are you going to play these cards in standard right now? No,
No.
like almost certainly not. Um, Maybe you could convince yourself that you need like 6 versions of whatever
I,
this effect, and you play
hmm.
the good 4, and then you supplement with 2 of these or whatever.
Hmm.
Maybe. But realistically, like, no. In current standard, there's a better version of this that exists. But I think these are at the appropriate power level to have in your long-term standard set where you're not committing to good or bad mana like long term. And these are like just playable enough that if people pick these up, they can play these moving, forward and not feel that bad that they don't have what the surveil version, right? Like the
Hmm.
surveil version is better, but they can play these, I don't play quite as often, but I do have these because I played, Foundations when it came out, and
Hmm.
I can still compete. These are almost as good kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think this is like the the right sweet spot to hit on your 5-year set. So I think these are not underrated in terms of what they actually do as Magic cards. They're like fine, but not good dual lands. But I think what's being underrated is that this is actually a pretty good choice to
Hmm.
include as
Okay.
the set of dual lands in Foundations because
Yeah.
you don't want to put like, what if they put shock lands in this? And then it's just like, okay, standard's fucking free reign for 5 years.
Yeah.
It's like, I was kind of happy to see this because you don't want them to be good, but you want them
Hmm.
to be serviceable. You want them to be usable.
Yeah.
You want to give some sort of commitment to color uh,
Hmm.
fixing. And so I think the temples are a fine choice for that. Like if they put the snarls in, it's totally useless. If they
Hmm.
put the shocklands in, it's a massive commitment to you can play whatever you want in standard for 5 years.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
this
like,
is,
if they were gonna put like the temples in, I don't know why they didn't just reprint the OG duels. Like, we should just have those. Like,
yeah,
that
I
would have been
mean,
perfect.
that's what I was gonna say next.
Yeah.
Is like, yeah,
It's like, I just bring us
no,
back.
where's
Like,
my fucking volcanic island?
Taiga. Like,
Yeah.
let's go. Um,
Badlands, baby.
but no, I agree with you that these are pretty good. Like, would I be personally happier if they were the Painlands? Yes, I would have preferred the Painlands, I think. Um,
Oh, and at that point, white border.
White border Painlands,
Yeah,
absolutely. We already talked about white border should just be every card in Foundations
of
already.
course. Yeah.
But no, like from a like cost perspective, these cards are already they've already been reprinted a bunch of times. They're only like a couple dollars, if not cents.
Yeah.
Um, and so they're very easy to pick up for the paper player, as well as yeah, budget options that you can just use for a long time.
Yeah, and
Um,
they're not unplayable, right? And that's
no,
like, if that's what I was saying, like if it's the snarls, like sure, they're cheap and people can buy them, but
yeah, but those are terrible lands.
yeah, those that's like shooting yourself in the foot.
Especially like extremely bad with the temples in conjunction with each other,
Yeah.
right? Like
Don't do the whole snarl temple mana
split it.
base.
Yeah, you if you do the snarl thing, you have to have the
The
other ones, the
surveillance.
surveil
Yeah.
lands. Um,
Um, so and I had the reaction at first of like, wow, they just printed strictly worse version of something we already have. That's weird.
mhm,
But I think the context of these lands outlive those ones by
mhm.
a more significant amount than we're used to. Like
Yes.
normally, like, oh, okay, well, those ones will rotate out and these will be around for 6 months. Like,
Like, what's the
okay,
point?
or a
Yeah.
year. Who cares? Now, these are going to be around for 5 years. So
Hmm.
it's a really good baseline to just be like, these are okay. They're not
Hmm.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And if there happens to be the combo deck somewhere, the reason this has been helpful in those things is that scrying when you have combos is better than surveilling most of the time. Um, 'Cause you just want to keep it in your deck. Hey,
Yeah.
keep it in your deck, buddy. I just want to play more Foundations now, even though I've
I
been.
know. This set is awesome.
I have been. I think I punted. Like we were counting today. I think I punted like 8 times. Like
Oh, you got to get a punt counter on stream for sure. Yeah.
pretty bad ones. I mean, I told you about the most egregious, but there were some other pretty bad ones. They're like, I was supposed to win that game. I fucked it up.
Yep.
Um, so,
I'm
but no,
telling you, it's just because like Foundations lets you know that you did it,
it's
whereas
true.
other sets don't.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
Other sets are nice enough to like hide your mistakes,
that's
right?
true. Yeah, and then you can never learn and never know what to do, and then you just hate the set and you stop playing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's been
perfect.
my experience anyways.
Hmm.
Except Dustmorn. I was like, I never really figured that set out, but I still enjoyed it.
Fuck, Dustmorn,
Yeah.
like that was a great set. That's like front runner for favorite set of the year.
Yeah.
Um, as far as
Next to
like
this one, of course.
mechanics. Oh yeah. Well, of course, next to this one. I don't know if it's recency bias, but um,
No, that was a truly great limited format. Like,
really was. Anyway, Jeff, are we ready for last call?
yes,
Okay. Yes, let's go.
let's do
All
it.
right, we got to talk about this beer that we're rating this evening.
Mhm.
And as always, we rate our beers on a scale from bronze to mythic, just like the tiers in Arena. This has nothing to do with what tier you are in currently. It's just a fun way to rate beers. So don't feel bad when we say that bronze beers are trash. They're horrible. You have to spit them out. You pour them on the ground. You hate them so much you can't even look at them.
And silver beers are basically just kind of boring, uninteresting. They're, macro brews or just micro brews that are don't have a lot going on.
Hmm. Gold beers are fine, but you probably won't drink them again.
Platinum are solid, and you would drink them again.
Hmm. Diamond beers are exceptional. You like this a lot. You show them off to your friends.
And Mythic, these are the best of the best. These are just like your favorite beers, whether that's the Duskmorn or the Foundations is yet to be decided, but
Hmm.
these
Yeah,
are the top picks.
best of the best. Jeff, let's talk about this Pakenham beer. This bitter.
Yeah. Did it pack the ham that you expected?
Ew. And no, it did not taste like ham at all. I'm very
Oh,
disappointed.
yeah. I feel like I was promised one thing and
Hmm.
given another.
They gave me nothing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, this one was a step above the other ones we had had.
Yeah.
Um, I was getting no sour flavor. That's great.
Yeah.
Um, None of the tart whatever I was like dealing with before. This had the bitterness I was looking for. Um, and it tasted right. I did enjoy this one. Um, I don't think it is like phenomenal or superb or anything
Yeah.
like that, but yeah, I was happy. I was happy with this one.
Yeah, and I feel like a quick review because it's been a while just for anyone listening with this brewery. We've done 3 or 4 of theirs now
Yeah, this is the
before this
fourth.
one.
Yeah.
So this is the fourth, so 3 before it. The first one was quite good, and then the next 2 were not our favorites.
Yeah.
So, and the first one was the one I had tried, and then I was like, oh, that's really good, and I just bought everything.
Mhm.
And so I was like, I'm like learning live, with Zach. It's like, oh, uh-oh, did I try the one good one, buy everything, and then, we
But
have to suffer through it.
to be
But
fair, the one good one was very good. So
yeah, exactly. And so when I took one sip, the first sip of this one, I was like, oh, okay.
thank
Like,
thank
yeah,
God.
this
Yeah.
is a step up from the previous 2 that we had tried. Not as good as the first one, not fantastic. I think this one's like platinum,
for sure.
but it was a good, enjoyable bitter. It's what I look for in a bitter. It
Hmm.
didn't have any strange off
Whatever's.
flavors or anything like that. So, um,
So
yeah,
yeah,
I enjoyed it a lot and had that sense of relief when I took the first sip. I'm like, okay, this one's fine. This one's
that's
good.
all I
Yeah,
wanted was the
yeah,
sense of relief.
yeah.
So
It's
great.
funny how perspective just changes everything, right?
It
Because
really
like if I had this
does.
one right after the first one, I'd be like, they took a step down. Like the
Hmm.
first one was really good, and this one's just pretty good.
Yeah.
But because I had those two in the middle, I was like, oh, okay, yes, we're
Yes,
back on
this one's
track.
great. I like
Yeah.
this. Yeah, or it would be, wow, this brewery's really good. They had that great beer, and that this one's like pretty great.
Like not as good as the first one, but still
But still
good.
really
Yeah,
good,
yeah.
yeah. And then you go a
Then you'd
cliff
get hammered.
dive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God. But no, this is cool. I'm really happy that you brought these, and I like to. It's literally the thing when you go to breweries. Like I want to taste literally everything, and a lot of the time, just a tasting, like the doing the tasters where you get a little bit of everything is nice, but
Yeah.
it is different than just like drinking a whole beer of all of them over a period of time. Um,
Yeah, and there's something like about this experience with this brewery in particular. There's something very like human about it. That one of them
mhm,
was really good, a couple of them were not great,
mhm,
not bad, or not good, and then this one was good, and it's
mhm.
just like, yeah, that feels like a person made this because it's
Exactly.
instead of like we're so used to good breweries, everything they make is awesome, and mediocre breweries make medium stuff. And it's just like this is a guy who's just
It's
like
up and down.
doing stuff, and sometimes he nails it, and sometimes he doesn't.
Yeah, it's like all my draft decks, man.
Yeah, yeah, I think we can all relate to that.
Yeah.
So,
Sometimes you nail it, sometimes you really don't.
sometimes you're really in the weeds.
Yeah. All right. Well, platinum's all around. Jeff, let's go to closing time.
Let's do it.
So, as always, you can reach us at Arena Regulars on Twitter and Instagram.
You can also find us on Arena itself under the username Arena Regulars Podcast.
If you want to talk to me personally, you can find me at Zulberg, that's Zulberg, Twitter and Instagram, as well as Twitch. I'm regular_Zach. But Jeff, where can they find you?
Best place is the Discord channel. We talk about standard, we talk about limited, we talk about deck lists, we talk about, beers. It's a great place. Come hang out. Link is in the show notes.
Also, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Spotify. Leave us a review there as well. Anywhere you can leave a comment, we'd really appreciate it. We'd love to hear all the different feedback that you have for us. This has been the Arena Regulars.
Reminding you that Sire of the Seven Deaths is just a weird attempt to get seven in a bunch of times, but not seven times.
Good night. All right, that's fine.